Hello champions, here we've got a Mesa combo Studio Caliber DC2. It's come in for a conversion to 240 volts, which means changing the transformer on this model because it's not a universal transformer, and changing the cord. Now this cord, I'm just going to do a quick test, and it's got no ground pin on it, which is that sucks. So I'm going to have to temporarily connect a ground to the chassis just to test the thing. You can see the ground wire does come in at the cable entry there, and it is bolted to the chassis correctly through paint, which isn't great, but it's got a screw there anyway. So I've got to do something about that because I'm not really happy about firing it up without a grounded chassis. I got requested to do a couple of voicing changes too. The thing sounds like a cardboard box, or sounds like it's in a cardboard box at the moment, which is typical sort of Mesa sound. I really don't like it myself, and there seems to only be one really extreme setting where everything sounds reasonable. In my opinion, if you got an amp and you just put everything midway, it should at least be usable tone, but this thing is totally not, and most other Mesas it's not too. So we're going to do a few mods to increase the upper end clarity, maybe bring a bit back, a bit of bottom end back to it in the later stages so it doesn't go real farty on the distortion. And there's caps everywhere to ground. There's snubber caps all over the place because the layout on the boards of all Mesas is so terrible. They get oscillation and all sorts of stuff at high gain settings, so they counteract it with band-aid measures all through the amp, and they do this to pretty much all their amps. That's why some really sound muffled. Now I chucked a resistor in there to measure bias. That wire had a cracked pad. Well, the pad lifted off the wire with the wire when I removed it. So I put a turret in there and hardwired to the nearest connections. That's just the cathode, well, the two cathodes. They've got a universal board in there that they use for their models that have 4 EL84s as well. This one's only got 2, so the outer ones aren't populated. And they put all these screws in, and that flexes the board, and the board pushes against the chassis if you do it up too tight. And those wires there, that's your plate connections that have high voltage on them. So if you over tighten those screws, you're pushing high voltage wires right against the chassis, and this chassis has no ground. Not that, you know, that would be isolated anyway because that's the primary, but yeah, that would basically short out the tranny or the plate connection to ground, which isn't good. They're just Mesa all over though, eh? Now these things, they're a pain to work on. You can either take off all the pots and just maybe remember what one goes in what hole, and the jacks and the switches, and lift the board up that way. Or you can disconnect everything at the back and lift the back of the board up and hope you don't break the wires at the front. The board, you can see there's like a lip on the chassis there. The board fits under that, and over here there's a lip there, and it just fits under that too. So the boards are really difficult to remove. It's like they've done it on purpose. I don't know why they make life hard for themselves, but anyway. I've got an extension lead plugged into the speaker outlet to the actual cabinet itself, which I'm not going to use facing the floor, but just showing you the back. They've got these black shadow things. This looks to me like an Eminence. Mesa, again, don't make their own speakers. They put stickers on OEM manufacturer speakers. First thing I noticed was this tag strip's hanging on by a thread. If that comes off, it could pull the wires out of the cone and render the speaker useless. But it's a very big one, so what I might do is just cut that off there, put another rivet in it, drill that out, and re-rivet it to the basket.
And we'll get rid of these quick connects and we'll actually solder to the thing. There's my phone, typical. So where was I? Yes, I'm gonna just give this thing a bit of a test, just to get a sense of what it's sounding like and where we want to go tone wise, as well as what I like to do is mark down all the voltages, all the rails, as well as the AC voltages coming out of the transformer, just so when we put in the mercury magnetics thingo, which is actually for the F30, sorry. They assured me that this is the model to go into this amp, into the 20s as well. It looks physically bigger, so we're going to have to drill some extra holes, and I'm hoping the voltages aren't too high across the board. There are a few different taps, but 240 volts is the highest one, so we'll have a look at that, and we'll make sure that all the voltages are, you know, what we expect. Right, so let's have a listen. I'm still playing with the settings on the camera to sort of give you the best indication. Everyone who does this kind of stuff understands that it just never sounds quite the same as standing next to the thing, but you try and give an indication of what we're picking up and what we like and don't like about it anyway. It's all relative. So I've just got everything rigged up. I'm checking the plate voltage, checking the cathode current for both the valves at once. And let's just give it a quick listen, eh? I've got the reverb tank hooked up at the back. Got me Strat here with the Shawbucker and the vintage Alnico 3s, I think they are. Should know that, eh? So let's set it to about volume of, say, 3. The relay reverb is I don't like the character of the tank. It's really metallic. It's got a real it's not very diffused. It's sort of like a it's got a real bouncy sort of sound to it. Sounds a little bit digital almost, you know. And one thing I noticed, there's a bit of blurriness that happens when you turn the reverb up to the actual, what should be a dry signal. It's like a little fuzz just riding on top. I always set to 5 on the gain. At first I thought it was just, oh, let's set everything flat for the time being. Got our master at say 2, 3. This thing's pretty out of whack if you got your output level all the way up. She gets a bit noisy and a bit too sensitive, so I'll set the output at around 3. A little bit of stuff rattling in the shop, but it's just sort of like a woolliness and a little bit of a buzz, almost like an active pickup whose battery's running out. And I noticed when you turn the reverb off, it goes away. That's not real crash hot, and the reverb's pretty weak too. It's there, but you'd expect at 10 it would be a little bit more in your face. But considering the tone of the thing, you probably wouldn't want much more than that anyway. So let's just have a play. Everything flat. We'll try everything flat on the lead channel as well. Let's try and get away a bit so you don't get as much picking noise. Just sounds like it's got a blanket over it. There's no detail there at all above about 2K. It's all just a blur. So let's I don't know that the presence will affect that. I think there's too much filtering in the circuit to be able to, once it's gone, you can't bring it back without bringing other stuff up that you don't want to come back with it. So that's presence maxed out. It just hits you with a shitload of around 1k, 2k. It's pretty nasal and obnoxious. That reverb is at 5. Sort of there. The reverb really interacts with the whole signal too, which it really shouldn't do in a well-designed circuit. So it's 0. Seems to, as you turn it up, seems to cut the signal a bit, attenuate it a bit, and it seems to put a little bit of a scoop at around that 1k mark. So alright, let's cut the mids a bit. Typical Mesa, if you've got any amount of gain, the EQ basically does nothing. You really expect that to be night and day, turning the bass all the way up and all the way down. Treble just adds harshness. Let's turn the gain down. So those tone controls and the volume are maxed out on the guitar. You got treble at 5. Let's take it up to 8. Let's max out the presence. There's just no top end detail there at all. It's just like it's all been chopped off before the distortion takes place. So yeah, as you may have guessed, not my favourite amp. The ones with the graphic EQ, you can have some real wacky EQ patterns, and it sort of brings it back, but it amplifies the noise along with it. Why cut out all the frequencies that give you guitar character and then try and bring them back later on, and then bring up all the noise with it and all the blurriness, and just don't get rid of them in the first place. But when your board layout is terrible, you need to get rid of them, otherwise it oscillates at certain settings, and that is super obvious. Tone can be considered a taste thing, whereas oscillation is just a malfunction. So they'd have warranty repairs, you know, coming out their nose if they did that. So I guess their solution was to just filter the hell out of it at various stages throughout that high gain channel. So back to the rhythm. Sounds like a breath of fresh air after that, doesn't it? Let's turn the master down a bit so I don't wash out the camera too much. See how much gain we've got on the first channel on tap. So that to me just sounds like one of the Rivera era Fenders, like a Concert or a Fender 75 in its stock form. So that's basically a circuit that's got a decent amount of bottom end being overdriven and just getting flabby. So it works on single note stuff, but as soon as you start playing chords or even triads, it just goes blurry. Oh, so, well, what would I say? Woolly. Yeah, it's not really a nice, pleasant, smooth breakup. It works better for some guitars. This is a Strat, you know. If it doesn't work with a Strat, something's wrong. So I guess the mission will be to see how far we can get opening up the lead channel, trying to get some detail back in without making it run away into oscillation. And as for the clean channel, I guess figuring out if we can do anything about this reverb getting a bit fuzzy, making the signal fuzzy when it's up, because the customer does use reverb a fair bit, and seeing if we can do something about the just the tinniness of the reverb return. So besides changing the transformer, we'll see how close we can get to that while we've got the board out, and we might have to do a few revisions just from the top of the board once we put it back in, because hopefully we don't have to take it out twice.